Today we are going to discuss about the first module, Mule ESB introduction, right? So let me explain about this ESB with a use case. Straight away I will start with a use case here. Types of web services, REST and a SOAP. Yeah, what is a REST? What is the full form of REST? Representation state transfer. What is a SOAP? Simple object access protocol, right? Now you need to be aware of web service because we are going to do a web service integration as well. In this use case, let me talk about that. There is a third party application and we are going to create some client application. Assume that we are going to create some client application. By this client application, I want to consume the operations present in a third party. Assume that this is a third party application like Amazon, which is having two operations: get all products, get product by name, which will take some input argument. Accordingly, it will execute the logic and it will return some value. Same here also, right? Now, this Amazon application, assume that this is exposed by using a SOAP web service. That means SOAP over, and it is using a protocol called HTTP protocol. Assume that this application is deployed on some server like Tomcat server. If any SOAP application is deployed on a server, one file will be generated. What is that file? Visual file. What is the visual? What is the full form here? It will describe about the application. That means it will give service name, service port number, and what are the operations present in it, what is the location of this. Everything will be described in this visual file, right? Now, based on the code generated in the visual, I want to consume the operations present in a third party application. SOAP is the protocol independent or protocol dependent. I am using HTTP protocol here. Now tell me service provider is a SOAP here for this application. SOAP is a protocol independent or protocol dependent. SOAP is a protocol independent. Now we can use HTTP or any messaging service like that, right? SOAP is a protocol independent. In this case, I am using a HTTP. Whenever the code is generated here, based on the code, I am going to consume the operations present in it. Now, after 6 months, the third-party application, the implementation is changed. Assume that initially it is Java. After 6 months, they change from Java to some third generation language like .NET. If they change the implementation, do I need to change the code at my client level? Only based on the definitions generated in the visual, I am going to consume it. Not depends on the implementation. Irrespective of the implementation, I can consume the third-party application based on the visual. Whenever you are integrating with the third-party application, we need to look for two things. One is whether it is loosely coupled or whether it is logically coupled. What I mean by loose coupling? Irrespective of the implementation, without changing the code, I can consume the operations in the third-party application. It is nothing but a loose coupling. Then what is a logical coupling? Let me explain the same use case again. Here when I use the HTTP protocol, I need to know what is the endpoint for this get all products. In order to know the endpoint of this get all products, we need to know what is the service provider, right? But when you come to the logical coupling, the definition stands like this as of now. Client no need to know who is a service provider. At the same time, service provider no need to know who is a client. Then only we can achieve a logical coupling. To achieve that, how? If you use HTTP protocol, we cannot, because endpoint we need to know. In order to know endpoint, we need to know who is the service provider from the client. So that logical coupling will not be satisfied. Let me explain with the same use case. We are going to consume a SOAP application, but this time I will use SOAP over messaging. Right? I am going to use messaging here. Right? Same. I am going to create my client application. From my client application, I want to consume the operations present in it. Right? Now, I am going to consume a SOAP application. Right? Whenever I get a request, one message, and I am using a messaging. So one message will be created. What is the message format? Any message contains two parts. What are those? Header and the body. I will wrap up this entire body into some SOAP envelope. And this message I will keep it into some third-party message broker queues. RabbitMQ, ActiveMQ, and one more anypoint MQ. Okay, which is from anypoint studio. Anypoint platform. Assume that right now you are using an ActiveMQ. Okay, some third-party message broker I am using. Now I will keep this message into some queue. I will name this as queue as into. Someone will poll onto this queue. They will read the message and they will execute at the server level, and it will respond back. Where it will respond back? While sending a message, did I send any response header? We need to send the response header. Under the headers, while sending a message itself, we have something called reply to header. So in this reply to, if I mention any queue name, I assume that I want to get the response in the RESP queue, and it is not available in the third party. Or the server will read that message and will execute that message and will respond back to the third party message broker, and that broker will understand based on the response. That response is having some header called response queue. If it is available, it will be keep it into the queue. Otherwise, it will generate a new queue with a name RESP queue, response queue, and this response will keep it in this response. Now my client will pour onto the response queue and they will consume. Here, did I achieve a logical coupling? Client no need to know who is the service provider. From the client, do I know who is reading this message and consuming this message? No, right? From this service provider perspective, do I know who is the client who sent this message? No, right? We achieved a logical coupling, but I introduced some third party message broker which I don't require. It's an overhead to my project. Without using this third party message broker, I need to achieve that functionality. So how to, what is the idea? Let's improve my idea without using a message broker. Okay. Let me explain the same use case again, but I will improvise this. Please try to concentrate. This is my client application. Okay. And we are going to consume, assume that as of now, we are going to consume a SOAP application. Now, whenever I get a request, previously I used SOAP related message to consume a SOAP application, right? Now I will create one message. Every message contains header and a body. Now this message I will be created in a my own format, my own proprietary format. This message I will keep it into some internal memory queues. Okay. In enterprise terminology, this internal memory queue called as channel. From now onwards, we can refer to internal memory queues. Please treat that as a channel. This request, this plain request, are kept into some internal memory queue. And I will configure one component which will read this plain message and it will convert into SOAP related message. What this component? I will call this component as an adapter. Maybe some logic is present in order to read this plain request and convert into some SOAP related message, which will convert to SOAP format, because we are going to consume a SOAP application. So I will call this adapter as a SOAP adapter. This sort of SOAP adapter knows how to consume SOAP application. Now, after 6 months, if they change from SOAP service provider to the third party application is changed to REST. What can I do here? Yeah, do I need to change entire code at my client level? What can I do? Simply changing the adapter will help out REST adapter. Maybe again the logic present in this REST adapter. This REST adapter knows how to take the plain request and how to convert into REST related message. So it will consume a REST application. So without changing the code, it's simply changing one adapter, I achieved a logical coupling. But I introduced two things here. One is internal memory queue and one is component. Tell me, as a web developer, when you are developing a web application, please tell me one thing. Will you be concentrating on a business logic or else such kind of an integration logic, how to integrate and how to consume as a web developer? So if you feel that if there is any library which is ready-madely available with such kind of integration logic, declaratively you can connect to this web application and you can use this logic, integration logic. Correct? So before going to this such kind of a library, let me explain the scenario one more time. Improvise this scenario. We have few more requirements here. Again, SOAP application or a REST application. Now I am getting some request. Assume that HTTP request that I kept into queue, internal memory queue called channel. And now the requirement is I want to validate the incoming request by using something called filter. Filter is the component which will read the incoming request, and what are the configurations you have configured in the filter. It will validate against that configuration. If at all it is success, then only it will keep it into some internal memory queue again. Otherwise, it will give some exception from here. Like I assume that the incoming format is X format, right? Now, I will use one more component called transformer. Don't try to understand about the component level. Just I'm just telling the overview of something. Okay, you will come to know what is that in the end. Now, this transformer, what it will do? It will read this request, and if you want to convert into any other format, like Y or Z format, you can convert into any other format by using this transformer. Transformer is a very powerful tool in integration, especially in Mule. So I'm using a transformer which will convert from one format to another format. After that conversion, I got something called Y as a message. So I will keep telling you. You know already what is the component which will take this plain request, and if you want to consume a SOAP application, what is the component we need to configure? Adapter. If I want to consume a SOAP application, I will configure a SOAP adapter. If I want to consume a REST application, I will consume a REST adapter. While integration as per the requirement, I am increasing one by one component. Like that, if you have n number of components as a web developer, it will be a headache for you, and it will take a lot of time to write integration logic itself. So we are increasing components here. Filter I introduced, the transformer I introduced. Previously I used only adapter. Like that, we can introduce multiple filters as per the multiple components as per the requirement. Now we will go with the real-time example. Assume that from the client, from the browser, we are getting some request. We are developing some web application. This is a web application. First requirement is, whenever any user walks into his application, and if we type for any product like iPhone, okay, if we click on the search button, requirement from the client is, you want to send this request to multiple e-commerce websites like Amazon, Flipkart, and some shop clothes or Snapdeal, like that. Right? These are the three e-commerce applications, e-commerce websites, which are exposed by using Amazon, maybe by using a REST, and Flipkart is maybe by using a SOAP, and Shopify is also maybe by using a SOAP. Okay, three different web services they are exposing it. Right? Now, what is the first requirement? You want to send the request concurrently to all the applications. Concurrently, that means simultaneously you want to send the request to all these three applications, right? And once you send the request, it will execute and give some details about the iPhone 11 from the each and individual application. So we will be getting some product details from these three responses as a three responses. Now the second requirement is that three responses from the three applications to be concatenated together. So as a single response. Once you concatenated that into single response, you want to give that in a format called JSON format. Now assume that this third party application is giving some JSON format response in JSON, and this Flipkart which is exposed over a SOAP. What is the standard format for SOAP? XML. Again here also it's an XML. You want to concatenate all these three responses together, and you want to convert these three different responses into a JSON response. Right? These are the requirements. Now, instead of writing how to integrate and how to convert and everything, my web developer will concentrate on business logic. That integration logic will be outsourced to some third-party vendor like Mule. So, what I am doing here, assume that this is a Mule application. This is an HTTP request from the browser. We are getting some HTTP request. That request will be listened by one of the component in my application. This assume that this is a filter. What it will do, you already know. It will receive the request and it validate against the configuration what we have configured, and if it is success, then it will keep it in queue. Otherwise, it will give some exception from here. I will use a transformer which will convert from one format to another format if required. Assume that I converted into some other format. Then I will keep it in a queue. Now, please tell me the component name which will take a single request as an input, and concurrently this component will send the request concurrently to multiple applications. That means which will take a copy of this request and it will keep it into some queues. How many copies are required? 3 copies, because it's going to send the request to 3 applications, right? 3 copies. What kind of component it is which will take one single input and gives multiple requests as an output? What type of component? Daily you use at your home as well. Yeah, Wi-Fi router which will take a single signal, out from the outside, and what are the electronic devices you configure to the router. It will send the request to all, that means it will send the signal to all, right? Router. Okay, it will route that request to multiple applications. So by connecting what? If you want to consume a REST application, what is the component we need to configure it? Here, adapters, right? So REST adapter, SOAP adapter, and a SOAP adapter, which will read this plain request and convert it to REST related and will consume. Here are the same SOAP adapter and SOAP consumer SOAP application, right? Actually, these adapters are also part of a router. My router is scattered the request to multiple applications concurrently. The first requirement is that. What is second requirement? You want to concatenate all these three. How many responses we are going to get, by the way? 3 responses from the 3 applications. My router will gather all these 3 responses. Now, what is second requirement? You want to concatenate all these 3 responses together as a single response. So, I will use one transformer after this router. Assume that this is extended. This flow is extended. I will configure one transformer after this router, which will take all these 3 responses as an input from the router, 3 responses as an input from the router, and this is actually a transformer, right? This transformer will take all these 3 inputs, and here I am going to write some data view expression. In Mule, we will use some data view expressions. Data view expression language 2.0 is the version, right? We are going to use the data view expressions. So there is a predefined function. Data view expression language is a functional programming language. So there are some predefined functions to use. I will use one of the predefined function called flatten, which will take all these 3 inputs as an input. That means as a payload. Payload is nothing but a body. It will take as an input and it will concatenate and it will give some response in a single format. That means it will concatenate and give the values from the 3 applications. And that list of products will be given as a JSON. In the transformer only we can convert from one format to another format, as I said earlier. So all these 3 responses are concatenated into a single list, and that list I want to give a JSON. So in the transformer only I will convert into JSON. Okay. So you are going to see all this again. Just I am giving the overview how the transformer will work and everything. So at the end of the transformer we will be getting some body. What is that body? List of products in a JSON format, right? So the 2 requirements have been fulfilled. That end of the flow, whatever the value, whatever the body we have in a JSON format, that will be given back to the client. Here, my web developer, he will display that code in a, he will choose the color, size, font and everything. So it will comes under presentation layer. Based on the code which you have given to him, he will display on the web application. Now, normally if you want to travel from one location to another location, normally you will take a bus. Similarly, my HTTP request is traveling from one location to another location through some set of channels, components and everything. This HTTP request is traveling from one location to one location through some bus like structure. So it will use bus framework internally. So this is a bus. This rectangular box I will call it as a bus, right? Now you know about a bus which contains some integration logic, how to connect with and all. Now, what is an ESB then? Enterprise is an organization, a company, service bus, right? In a company, we have many applications, but for all applications, we require some components in common, like transaction security, coding, remoting, etc., etc. Any bus which having such kind of a service, that means any bus which is having such kind of a common logic and which have that kind of a service, we'll call that as an enterprise service bus, because I will call this rectangular box as a service also. This service can be used at an enterprise level by different applications. Any bus which provide declarative security, declarative transaction, declarative pooling, such bus are called as enterprise service bus. Now, let me show you the real example of this picture here. Assume that SmartFrix is the client. He is my client. Okay, he asked me to develop his web application. Okay, I am developing this web application. What is his requirement? Whenever any user, assume that I am the user walking to his application and I typing for some product like iPhone 11. I think the latest one is Pro, right? So if you click on search button, What is the requirement? If anyone click on the search button, user click on search button, that request should go to multiple applications and it should get the response back. Right? Let's see. If I click on iPhone 11 here, now once I click on this details for this iPhone 11, now I got all the details from the different websites, different e-commerce applications which I connected. Who is writing all this? In an ESB. That means in an integration logic. We are writing all this, how to connect and how to get the data and how to concatenate and how to convert from one format to another format. That code will be given back to the web developer. He will display the size. I mean, he will decide what is the background, what is the size, and what is the color and everything. But see here, the price, this price are mapped to some price tag, correct? Do you think that Amazon also is giving some value? I mean, these values in a price tag, and Shopify is also in a price tag? No, maybe they may give in a price, cost, and rate some other things. But my client requirement is we want to extract the values from that, and we want to map it to price tag. Who will do this? Where I will do this? In a transformer level, we can do by using a data view expressions. Got it? So after converting everything, finally we'll get some product that will be given back to the developer.